Welcome to Perception versus Reality Sports and Culture, where we cover sports from a different angle and bring you topics most podcasts and radio shows will not cover. I'm your host, Rodney870, and welcome my co-hosts, Neely, Mr. Sports IQ, Lemuel, aka Limwood, and Stanley, known on Instagram as Third World 870. Please enjoy this PvR clip and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I have Neely Vance with me today. We're going to try to cover these topics and be unbiased as possible and bring you guys some good content today. Our first topic of the day, doing Fox Sports 1, Doug Gottlieb was covering this weekend for Colin, and he had an interesting topic where he presented a list of basketball players, NBA basketball players, that he said was at the current moment better than LeBron James. And he stated that these players were better on both ends and that LeBron wasn't performing up to the level that he should be performing. And we're going to cover that topic today and discuss whether it's fact that LeBron is not in the top 10 right now. And has LeBron been performing at the top level? Is it age? Is it ability? What is it? We're going to let you listen to exactly what Doug said, and then we'll get into this topic.
Just not. Like, has he had a better and more impactful year at both ends of the floor than Giannis Antetokounmpo? No. You can give me the raw stats about how, he's averaging slightly fewer points and, and less assists and less rebounds or whatever. But if you watch the other end of the floor, you're trying to hide LeBron James. You're trying to hide him. Doesn't move the same. We're looking at raw stats. Has he had a better year than Paul George? More impact at both ends of the floor. Has he had more impact than James Harden, than Kevin Durant, than Kawhi Leonard, than Joel Embiid, than Nikola Jokic, than Anthony Davis, than Steph Curry?
Goddamn Facebook.
What?
I'm about to cut that part out. Yeah, I'm about to cut that part out. Well, so you just heard what Doug Gottlieb said, and he pretty much put a host of players above LeBron James, from Paul George to Russell Westbrook to Nurkic. He also said Kawhi Leonard was better, and a couple of more players. You can say he has a somewhat of a point since the injury, and that's what we have to do with this season, in my opinion. We have to separate pre-injury, post-injury with LeBron James' season. He's 34 years old. He suffered a groin injury, held him out for 6 to 7 weeks. He missed a total of 18 games. During those 18 games that he missed in that 6 to 7 week period, he couldn't really condition the way he normally conditions. He couldn't really do a whole lot because it was a groin injury. It wasn't like it was maybe a wrist injury or a hand injury or something like that where he could have continued to condition and run. He just couldn't shoot. But he actually had a leg injury or a lower body injury where he couldn't condition the way he should have been conditioning to stay in shape. And if you look at LeBron James pre-injury, he was 27 points a game, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 51% field goal percentage, and 1.4 steals per game, along with a 37% three-point percentage. When you look at the defensive side, because that's one of the things Doug pointed out, was that LeBron hasn't been giving it on both sides. Last year with Cleveland, LeBron didn't play much defense during the regular season. I think we all agree with that until the playoffs. Right. This year, LeBron was ranked 30th of 515 players eligible for this stat in the NBA in defensive rating. And the defensive win shares, he was top 20. And he was actually playing good defense. The Lakers defense, when he went out with injury, was ranked 7th to 9th in the league. I'm not absolutely sure, but I know it's somewhere between those two numbers. And they had just gone on a little run. I think they won 4 out of 5 games. They had just defeated Golden State by 20-plus points on Christmas. And LeBron James suffered an injury late in the third quarter in a game where he was pretty much dominating with 25 points and like 10 rebounds. And at that point, the team was doing good. The team was moving forward. They had a 20-14 record. They was 4th in the West, 2 games out of second place. looking at their schedule for the next 6 games, we're going to be against losing teams. So if he hadn't suffered the injury, you could say that the Lakers may have been in second or third place by mid-season and possibly still in the top 4 by All-Star break. And I agree with Doug Gottlieb that, post-injury, LeBron has played some terrible games. He's played little to no defense. But we also have to look at the fact that he's been trying to play himself back into shape. He's been having issues with not being able to cut his minutes. Normally when players come off 7 weeks, they play about 20 to 25 minutes to try to work themselves back in shape. LeBron first game back, he played 45 minutes in an overtime game versus the Clippers. So we got to look at this and be realistic about it. But at the same time, he is LeBron James. We hold him to a different standard, and we got to hold him accountable. With that said, I'm going to let my co-host today chime in, Neil Advance, and give his opinion on it.
Yeah, like you said, man, a lot of it is the standard to me that we're holding LeBron to. That's kind of what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. If you're comparing apples to apples and you're being more relative and you say what you expect LeBron to be and what you expect, maybe a James Harden or Giannis or some of them to be at that point, relatively speaking, yes, maybe those guys are performing to their own standard or in Giannis's case, a little bit above the standard that you might have expected from him at this particular point. And LeBron is slightly below his. So, maybe you can find 10 players in the league that you can say, all right, maybe they're performing better than I expected them to be performing, and LeBron is not performing as good as I'd like for him to. But again, like you also pointed out, if we're looking at pre-injury, post-injury, and giving him some leeway with the injury itself, I know we want him to be Superman, but this is a human being in year 16 in the NBA. So the injury can take a toll on his body, but prior to the injury, LeBron was very much in the thick of the MVP race. In most cases, people had him in second, third, before James Harden's real hot streak. It was definitely LeBron and pretty much James Harden before LeBron. Harden kind of pushed him back, and obviously Giannis and Paul George to this point. But those are probably the only 3 players that I feel like right now, if I was offered a trade just straight up for the rest of the season, which one would I want over LeBron? Maybe those 3 players, maybe a KD I would think about, but it's going to depend on the pieces that are around me. There's definitely not 10 players in the NBA that I feel like I would trade LeBron away from my team for and feel like I came up or like I won.
Absolutely.
Definitely not for right now. If we're looking at age and projecting out what these players may be in the near future, maybe. But, like I mentioned to you before, it seems like everybody is just waiting for that chink in LeBron's armor. They're waiting to tear him down. So as soon as something seems like it's kind of off with him, I think the pile on was going to kind of come. As a LeBron fan and, somewhat being a bias in LeBron's favor, I thought LeBron was going to start to decline 2 or 3 years ago. So honestly, I'm impressed that he's at this level still. Honestly, at this point, I thought it might be, 7, 8, 9 players better in the league than LeBron.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not. At the end of the day, coming into this season and even leaving this season, I would feel like LeBron is definitely in the top 3 players, if not still probably the best player in the league if, all things were equal. We have, people that are going to have their biases, the opposite way and then, kind of push their own agendas. It's a hot topic if you say, you can jump out on the limb and make that hot take that it's 10 players better than LeBron, and you can probably damn near get Skip on TV to find a way to say that it's 25 players that's better than LeBron and base it all off free throw percentage. But at the end of the day, anybody with any kind of common sense knows that LeBron is definitely still in the top 5 players in the league, if not still the overall best player, when he's fully healthy.
Exactly. And I agree with what you said. And like you said, Giannis, Paul George, KD, and Kawhi, not Kawhi Leonard, but who's the other guy? Harden. James Harden is having a hell of a season. Those guys are having a great season, no doubt, and I agree with you that maybe you could say right now those guys are better than LeBron if you say they're playing better than him now since the injury.
Right.
I agree with that. But if you honestly look at what he did pre-injury and post-injury, And like I keep saying, you have to separate the two parts of this season,
Right.
because those two parts make a big difference in showing where he is and where he's currently at right now. And when you look at the post injury and a player's hasn't played in 7-8 weeks, trying to work himself back into shape, trying to get back coordinated with the team that he hasn't played with over 18 games. 18 games is a quarter of the season.
Right.
That's a quarter of the season, and it seems like a lot of people don't realize that. And when you have a guy like Doug Gottlieb, who is a known LeBron hater, comes out and say he's top 10, he's not top 10, that's just extreme to me. And that's why I wanted to address this topic, because all the Kobe fans and all the LeBron haters will be out there jumping on this saying, yeah, he's absolutely right. But when you look at these other teams and you're honest about this, perception versus reality. Perception is LeBron is not getting the Lakers where they should go. They're not in the playoffs. It's LeBron's fault. Well, let me give you a little reality. Reality is LeBron had them in fourth place before the injury, 34 games into the season. That's almost halfway through an 82-game regular season. LeBron had them in fourth place when Ingram had missed 12 games due to suspension and injury. Rondo had missed 20 games due to suspension and injury. Then you had Kuzma, who had missed a couple of games. Then you had JaVale McGee, who was out with the flu, who was a big contributor, averaging about 14 and 8 at the time. He missed 3 or 4 games with the flu. Right. So through all this, in the first 34 games, LeBron had this team 20 and 14 in fourth place, 2 games out of second place.
Right.
And he was averaging 27, 9, and 8 while doing this at a 51% field goal percentage. If you put those numbers on any other player in the league and you tell them that this guy has taken a team that was 14th in the Western Conference last year and won 35 games, and he didn't add another superstar. The only thing he did was add a few veteran players that weren't stars anymore, that was out of their prime, and himself. And with these young guys, and he had this team in fourth place halfway through the season, and they had just defeated the defending champs by 20-plus points on Christmas Day on the road. Not at home, on the road.
Exactly.
You got to look at those things, and that's the reality of it. Now, here's more reality. 18 games LeBron missed. This team goes 6-12.
Right.
And yeah, you had Kuzma missed 2 or 3 games, and Zoe missed a couple of games at the end of this 18-game stretch. But all in all, when they started out, everybody was healthy. They started out like 2-9 in the stretch against terrible teams. Right. Lost to the Bulls, lost to the Knicks, lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who only had like 5 or 6 wins at the time. So what I see in all this is that LeBron has come back and try to will this team to the NBA playoffs. And in the meantime of trying to do this, it seems like everybody is hot on it's his fault. But we want to dismiss, which is the reality of it, that 18 games while he was out, this team dropped from 4th to 10th.
Right. Like Gottlieb even came in, he kind of basically threw everything he was going to say had lost all its value to me when he started out by saying he didn't want to hear about the stats. Like at some point you have to break stuff down with stats. Yep. Like there are certain situations where you can say he just doesn't look the same, and everybody can kind of tell that LeBron just doesn't look the same. But for the most part, there's going to be partially injury, partially age. He's not going to heal the same. Again, we want him to be Superman. He just flat out ain't. But he basically said don't give him the stats to basically show you that LeBron is still basically able to perform. He's just saying that he's not because he wants to say it and he's on a losing team. Yeah. If LeBron had came back and basically had the same type of numbers or even mediocre stats, but the Lakers were the 5th or 6th seed right now, there would be no way to justify it. So since LeBron, the Lakers are kind of bottom dwelling right now in the West, struggling trying to get into the bottom of the playoffs, then this is a great time to attack him because, the great LeBron has always been going on long playoff runs and making it to the finals in the East and things like that. And he can't get this team into the playoffs at all. Then there must be something wrong with LeBron. You got to look at the context of the entire situation, though. Like, you got to break down that this man has missed so many games and that, like I said, is late in his career and he can't just come back and take over and pick up exactly where he left off and just take off in the NBA. So, again, it comes off as, hate. It comes off as, some of that shock, jock stuff. We got to get the ratings up, go out and say something crazy about LeBron. I get it. But like you said, you got too many fans that like to rah-rah, and then when it comes down to, the all-time great conversations, which is ultimately the only conversation I really want to have with LeBron. When it comes down to the all-time great conversation, he's still number 2, and there still ain't nobody else for me that you can push, above him, and he's still creeping up on Jordan. At any time in the next 4 years, he could potentially catch him.
Exactly. And LeBron, and this is not a LeBron love fest, as I know some people would think, but it's just a facts versus opinion case. Only thing we're doing is presenting you facts. We're not presenting any opinions. We're presenting facts along with our opinions. And so it's one of those things where you see these commentators, and I would see a lot of people that would agree with these commentators. They're giving you just straight opinion and no facts behind it. Like Doug Gottlieb said, well, LeBron can't play defense, and he gave up 35 to Randall the other night, and he was pointing that out. Well, if you look at the game, Randall is a power forward, a true power forward. LeBron is a small forward. LeBron plays a more physical game out in the run when you're moving, but he's more of a finesse game and a half court offense. Right. So when you're talking about defending a guy that's 6'9", 6'10", that truly, if he was an inch or two taller, would be one of the best centers in the league, and you're talking about playing him versus LeBron guarding this guy for 40 minutes a game, that's just ridiculous in itself when you think about it. Right. And then at the same time, LeBron didn't guard the guy the whole night. They were switching up on him between Kuzma, LeBron, and JaVale. And Randall had a great game, no doubt. But in that game, LeBron also made some key defensive plays to secure that game.
Right.
He got a steal at the end of the game. He made a couple of key blocks. He knocked away some passes, and he played great defense in that game compared to what he had done before, where he was just standing around against Memphis and giving up wide open threes and not closing out on drivers and things like. It was just terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible the way he played against Memphis, and I agree with everybody. Right. But when you see a guy like this take the opportunity to shit on a veteran, a legend like LeBron James, and then you see a lot of the haters jump on top of it, that's when I got to stand up and say, hey, you know what? On my show, I want to tell you perception versus reality. I want to give you the facts, but I'm also going to address these situations. And that's why I want to do this podcast, so I can address guys like Doug Gottlieb who just looking for shock value.
Right.
Like it's a shock value to say a center from Denver who's never won a playoff game, who's never been in the playoffs, is better than LeBron because he's in Denver and he's averaging like 18 points a game, 19 points a game, and 6 or 5 or 6 assists.
Right.
If LeBron was averaging those numbers and playing the way he was playing, he wouldn't even be talked about.
Exactly.
They would say he was done.
Yeah, he's finished.
LeBron is having a so-called terrible season by everybody's standards.
Yeah.
27 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. Had a Western Conference team that didn't make the play, didn't even come close to the playoffs, in 4th place.
Right.
Before the All-Star break.
Right.
Defensive rating was 30 of 515 players. To put that into perspective, to give you guys a benchmark of what their rating is. In 2008, this year, in 2019, before the injury, LeBron was 30th of 515 players. With Cleveland last year, he was ranked 314th in the league out of 515 eligible players. So that show you the difference in defense where he was playing. Cleveland was ranked 26th, 27th in the league in total defense. And before the injury, the Lakers was ranked 9th.
Right.
8th or 9th. So that shows you the difference. So when Doug Gottlieb get up there and after 4 or 5 games of LeBron returning from injury, and he's trying to work his way back into shape, and no excuses. He's LeBron James. He should get out there, and he should have beat Memphis. He should have beat New Orleans. He should have beaten Atlanta before the All-Star break.
Right.
Those were terrible losses, and those do go on LeBron back because you don't have to be in shape to beat those teams.
Right.
I can see if you losing to Golden State and to Milwaukee and to Boston.
Yeah. But LeBron is, at this point, he's going to get overly analyzed. I think he understands that now, like, in the nonchalantness he shows to the media and stuff like that comes off as arrogance. Like, he knows that each moment is going to be overly analyzed. Each thing is going to be drilled down to, exactly what he did that's going to cause, what happened. But at any point you can. I mean, I can watch tonight's game, and if the other team wins and Aiden scores more than LeBron at that particular night, I can say right now in these last 30 minutes, DeAndre Aiden is better than LeBron James. LeBron James ain't even better than the rookie. So it's like, what type of sample sizes are you talking about at this point, Doug Gottlieb?
Yes.
Like,
that's a good point.
When we talk about the grand scheme of the season, and even moving forward over the next 2 or 3 years, LeBron is going to be one of the best 5 players in the NBA for the next 2 or 3 years, clearly in most people's eyes. Yes, you can say over the last 10 games, these few people have been better than him, just like you can go over a certain span of James Harden's hot streak and say he's the best scorer of all time.
Yeah.
But you don't, jump out and say, really James Harden at this point is one of the best scorers I've ever seen, and then start to go down the pantheon of scores and basically put James Harden at a certain place in all-time greatness. So, it's only a certain level of respect I would give to Doug Gottlieb anyway. I mean, I take, most of the things he say with a grain of salt. Looking at his all-time list earlier today, he had LeBron 6. So, once I saw that, I can't think of 6 people that I could legitimately put over LeBron James. He had, Larry Bird and a couple other guys that,
above LeBron. Yeah.
Crazy. And KD ridiculous. Was 8, like right behind LeBron. KD over Shaq and things like that.
KD over Kobe, right. Yeah.
KD having nothing really to prove, but he all the way up here on your list. LeBron doing all of this for so long, and he still is only so far.
And that's what kills me, like, when you look at a KD. And people compare KD's situation to LeBron. It was totally freaking different. Right. LeBron was getting beat by Boston and Orlando, and the Lakers were winning championships, and San Antonio was winning championships.
Right.
LeBron didn't go and join one of those 4 franchises to make them superhuman or a super franchise. Right. When he grabbed 2 players and said, hey, all 3 of us are losing. Chris Bosh was losing in the East every year. Chris Bosh never even won a playoff game in Toronto in 7 years. D. Wade hadn't won a playoff game in Miami in 4 years before LeBron joined.
Right.
He hadn't won a playoff series. I mean, I think he had won like 2 or 3 games. And LeBron couldn't get over the hump versus Boston, who had 4 All-Stars, versus Orlando, who had Dwight Howard and a bunch of long defenders, where LeBron had Mo Williams and guys like that, and Delonte West, who was 6'1", 6'2" guys who couldn't play against those guys like Petrus and those, just guys like that in Orlando. So LeBron's trying to get over that hump. So he didn't go join those teams. He said, hey, let's go put something together, because all 3 of us are having issues getting out of this Eastern Conference, and we got to look at Boston and Orlando every year, and they have stacked teams. Then we have to look at the Lakers and San Antonio out west. He did that. KD was defeated by Golden State, down 3-1. Up 3-1 against this team and lost 3 straight games. This team went to the finals, was up 3-1 to Cleveland, and lost the championship. Was 1 minute away from back-to-back championships. 1 minute left in that game, in Game 7, the score was tied 89-89.
Right.
And he joined that team.
Right. Not to mention that he had a legit top 10 player.
Yes, and that's a good point. When LeBron left Cleveland, he had Mo Williams. Mo Williams wasn't even top 50 at that time.
Exactly.
He wasn't top 50, 6'1" guy. Kevin Durant had a former defensive player of the year in Serge Ibaka.
Right.
And all defensive team players, 6'10" guy that could block shots and actually make mid-range jumpers. And he had Russell Westbrook, who at that time was a 27 and like 8 guy, with 5 or 6 rebounds at that time, and a future MVP, and couldn't get it done.
Right.
It's not the same. So even for Doug Gottlieb in that case, to put KD 8th and LeBron 6th, 2 spots from him, that's just ridiculous to me. Right. And it's like people, when you notice how people hate LeBron so much, that they understand the game. And I see a lot of people like this on social media sites. They understand the game, and they know that, hey, if I got 5 shooters around me that are the best in the league, the game is going to be easier for me because you can't double team me. Right. But if you're like LeBron, where you playing with a team full of regular players, or even when you just had Kyrie only, they still could work double teams on you guys, because Kyrie was a 6'2" guy, so they could put Klay Thompson, who's 6'7", on Kyrie, and contain Kyrie and make it tough on him. He ain't going to stop Kyrie from scoring his 20, but he's going to make it tough on him. So when I look at those things and I see the hate, and I see like Doug Gottlieb hate, that's why I wanted to address this. Right. Last thing I will say about this before I end this topic is that when you see people pile on and blame this guy for everything, it reminds me of the Romo syndrome with the Cowboys, where Tony Romo would have 40 touchdowns in a year and 10 or 11 interceptions, and he would throw for 4,000 or 5,000 yards, and the Cowboys would go 8-8. And out of those 8 losses, they would lose 5 games, like by the defense giving up. Yeah, exactly. They 27 ranked defense in the league, and these jokers would give up like a last-second touchdown 3 or 4 times a year. And every year after year, Romo would take the blame for this. Romo would take the blame, and that killed me inside, because it's like, how can you blame this guy when he's the one shining light on our team?
Exactly.
Anytime Romo had a top 10 running game and a top 15 defense, the Cowboys made the playoffs, and 2 times they got a first round bye.
Yeah.
He had that 4 times in his career. Dak has had that 3 times in 3 years. He 3 for 3.
Yeah, exactly.
3 for 3. Top 15 defense, top 5 running game the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of syndrome I see with this, is that it's the blame on LeBron.
Right.
Like the last 3 or 4 games, the Lakers have been losing, and if you watch social media and you watch the trends, everybody is blaming LeBron for everything. Like, well, they're watching this guy so focused on this, laser focus on this one guy, that they're watching like 3 or 4 plays a game where he don't play defense, and they point out he don't play defense. And I watched Kawhi Leonard, who is so-called a defensive player of the year, the other night. They were playing against, I can't remember what team they were playing against, but they won at the buzzer, and he let a guy drive past him 3 or 4 times. The Blazers, yeah. C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard blowing past them, knocking down Jays on them. Kyrie was killing them one game.
Yeah.
And you don't hear anybody criticize him, say, oh, well, Kawhi don't play defense.
Right.
That's the reason they lost, because Kawhi didn't play defense.
Yeah, nobody talks about why other teams lost. Period.
Exactly.
The only team I hear criticized about why they lost is LeBron and
if you think about it, this NBA in this era averaged about 108 to 112 points a game.
Right.
Ain't nobody playing defense.
Right, exactly.
Ain't nobody playing defense.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You know, if we being honest about it.
Yeah.
Nobody's playing defense.
We can't use that to judge him. Like, I mean, both of us have watched LeBron. It's like, damn, LeBron, you should have got back. Or LeBron just stood there, or you was lazy. Or, like, we've seen that.
My wife tell me I'm more critical on LeBron watching the game than any other player.
Exactly.
Because I expect more from him.
Yeah.
But I'm watching him like that. But like I was going to finish off and say, when the Lakers losing, what about Luke Walton and his rotations?
Right.
You have Rondo in the game at the end of the game where you need defense and 3-point shooters, instead of having Reggie Bullock in the game, who's a 6'7" defender and can knock down a 3 at a 42% clip.
Right.
He's on the bench, but Rondo's out there at 6'1" and can't make a jumper and can't switch on anybody.
Yeah.
What about the defensive rotations? What about a team having a big man that's dominate, and instead of you playing JaVale McGee or Tyson Chandler 15 to 20 minutes each, you play them 10 minutes each, and then they get killed inside by a dominant center.
Right.
Like, it's things like that where we don't point at the coach.
Yeah.
It's things where I'm watching the young players not be consistent until as of late.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to blame them.
Exactly.
And we're not saying blame them. When LeBron come out and say, hey, we need to play better, we need to do these things, everybody lose their mind.
Yeah. Like, LeBron tripping, you ain't even doing your job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where LeBron has fault. Before I end this topic, LeBron has fault, no doubt. I agree with everybody. He's at fault at times, and he does things wrong. And yeah, on defense, he can get lazy, because in year 16, he's not the defensive stopper he used to be.
Right.
He's not going to do it 40 minutes a game. He doesn't have the legs to do it. He's played 100 games 8 years straight. Like, not 80 games, not 70 games, 100 games 8 years straight. So he's going to have those hiccups during the season where he's not really fully focused on defense. And I'm not saying it's okay.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I understand.
Right.
I wish he was Superman too. I wish he had vibranium where at 34 and 16 years in the league, he could play defense the way he did in Miami for 46 minutes a game.
Yeah.
It don't happen that way.
I wish he could chase down, block all game.
Yeah.
And then get back and catch an alley 10 times a game off the court. Yeah, I wish he could do that too.
Yeah. So in conclusion, Doug Gottlieb, we think you're full of shit. We think you should revise your list. And if you want to keep that list for the last 10 games, let's preface it like that.
Yeah.
Let's put an asterisk on that list and say, hey, this is over the last 10 games since LeBron came back from injury.
Right.
Don't put out a bullshit list saying that LeBron, is not in the top 10 anymore and he's this and that, and just totally dismiss all statistics that show that he is in the top 10.
Right.
When you say use the eye test, I'm using the eye test. He putting the ball in the basket 14 times a game to average 27, 28 points a game.
Exactly.
He's averaging 9 assists, so that means he's getting teammates open 8, 9 times a game for open, easy shots. That's 18 more points. At a small forward in year 16, he's averaging damn near 9 rebounds. He got 6 triple-doubles for the year. Got 27 double-doubles in 45 games played.
Right.
So he's doing something right. And don't point out James Harden's stats of 36 points a game and his 18 free throws and then tell me to ignore LeBron James stats. Don't do that. So to end this subject, Doug, you have your own opinion. We have our opinion too. Got the freedom of speech. So with my freedom of speech, I'm going to tell you full of shit. I'm going to tell you revise that list or put an asterisk on that list saying the last 10 games. And if you say the last 10 games, I absolutely agree with you. Over the last 10 games, LeBron has not been a top 10 player in the NBA. But for this season, for what he's done versus these other guys, he's still top 3. No doubt. Thank you for listening to the PvR Sports Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch new episodes and PvR clips. Like our Facebook page and share with your friends if you enjoyed this podcast. As we say in the South, catch you later.